thank you for coming. And so the point of this is we're going to have April Lott, who will speak to us, and then we'll have a few announcements, and then people who are flooded or impacted seriously by the storm could talk to somebody who wasn't, and we're going to record those and use them like an archive, like StoryCorps does in NPR for the library. And then Zion's going to give you some creative ideas about that. So yes, you're on the schedule. So April Lott is the CEO and president, right, of Directions for Living, and they're the company that we use to have our social worker for the city that we share with Treasure Island. And she gave a talk at the Tampa Bay Resiliency Conference, and it was fabulous. So thank you, April.
You know, it's funny, when I went to the Tampa Bay Resiliency, they had asked me if I would come and speak through via email or something, and anytime I get asked to speak, I say yes, of course. I don't even know the details. I just say yes, of course. And so, like the couple of days leading up to that conference, they sent an email to me to say, "Do you want to have a PowerPoint presentation?" And I thought, well, that's odd. Why would I have a PowerPoint presentation? I'm just going to you know, because I thought I was going to be on a panel. I'm like, why would I have a PowerPoint presentation if I'm on a panel? And so I asked the question, you know, that you might expect me to ask, which is, well, do other panelists have a PowerPoint presentation? And they said yes. And so I'm like, well, that is so odd, right? I'm like, no, I'm not going to do a PowerPoint presentation. So I get there and I walk into the green room, right? Do you guys know what a green room is? So it's supposed to be like a special room, right, where you get ready to go speak. And so I'm in the green room with these other individuals, and I'm like, oh, are you guys a part of the panel that I'm on? And they look at me like I'm speaking some other language. And one of the women says, let me go get somebody. And so she does her thing. So the woman comes in and she said, I'm sitting, she's standing. She says, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You're our keynote speaker. All of a sudden, everything made sense about PowerPoint presentations and whatnot, right? So anyway, I got up there because that's all I could do, because I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation. And so all I could do is kind of speak from my experiences, right? And really what they wanted me to talk about, which is what I want to talk with you about tonight, is mental health. And the mental health as it relates to storms, and before storms, after, in the middle of storms, and after storms, and what these things are doing to our mental health. And that really is what I want to talk about. So I am April Lott. I am the president and CEO at Directions for Living, which is a community mental health provider that serves all of Pinellas County, including the wonderful city of Gulfport. And I was flooded. And, you know, sometimes I reflect on the fact that I was flooded through this lens of, just to make me feel better, through this lens of I was flooded so that I could be able to talk about being flooded, right? Because there is something to experiencing being flooded that if you haven't been flooded, you might miss some of the nuances of what it means to be flooded. So I had actually evacuated. We've never been flooded before. We've owned our home 15 years, but we do live on Allens Creek. And I had evacuated, and as I had been instructed to do, right? But my husband, who's hard-headed, wouldn't, okay? And so I was like, fine, you know, be that as it may, right? I'm leaving you, right? And so I left him. And I went to a safe place, and actually it was my office, and I was set up for success, right? I had all my stuff, had my Bay News 9, you know, I have a generator, the whole kit and caboodle. And it was about 9:30 at night when he calls me to say that we had lost power hours before that. And he calls me to tell me that he has fallen, that he has gone out back. He's trying to see how high the water is. We have everything on our lanai, everything that you could possibly imagine has been moved to the lanai, and he has fallen. And he thinks he's hurt himself pretty badly. And so I had about, 3 seconds to make a decision about whether I was staying or going. And so naturally I went. And I barely made it into the neighborhood because of the water. And I get there. Not that I'm a medically trained provider, I might add, because what am I going to do now that I'm there if he's really hurt? It turned out that I think he had really bruised his ribs. He had fallen and he was injured. In any case, so now I'm trapped at my house. I can't leave. The water is coming, and as many of you maybe, but certainly for me, let me just say I was born and raised in Pinellas County. Since the early days, I can remember preparing for hurricanes. I mean, I have very vivid memories of being very young preparing for hurricanes. And so I would say I've prepared for hurricanes, you know, how many dozens of times. And we've always done it the same way. I've always done it the same way. My family's always done it the same way. Some of you may laugh at the way we've done it because it turns out I was all wrong, right? Like the way we've prepared all these years has been wrong. But who knew, right? Because we'd never been flooded before. But the way I've prepared for it is we move everything outside in and we move everything inside up. That's how we've prepared for it, right? So if it's a wind event, it's all inside and can't go anywhere, right? If it's a water event, a flood event, right, it's up. We raise everything up. So that's how I've done it since I was this big. Well, it turns out, right, that I don't know how water works. I didn't know how water worked, turns out. Because you can lift anything as high as you want to lift it. And when the water comes, it lifts it, right? Flips it on its head and takes it down wherever it can take it, right? And so that's exactly what happened. I thought I was prepared, and I wasn't. All the things that I lifted as high as I could lift simply lifted, right? So we all know these cliches, right? But rising tides lift all boats. We don't even know what that means. Turns out that what that means is it doesn't matter how heavy it is, how big it is, right? I'm assuming some of you guys saw on the news, right? Like huge dumpsters just floating down the middle of the street. Cars floating down the middle of the street. Some of you maybe had cars floating down the middle of the street, right? Like water just lifts it. So I did all the things that I had always done before, and it turns out that I just, I don't know what, fed the storm. I just fed into the storm. I also thought I could control, so when the water started to come, it's midnight or so, and I have this thought, I knew that I needed to move my car. We had already moved our cars previously, and now I needed to move my car again because the water is coming higher. And so we go outside, and the water is here, and it's pitch black, right? You can hear generators in the distance. We can't see anything, but we're walking. Interestingly enough, when we get outside, everybody in our neighborhood is outside. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on out here, right? And they're like, they're just watching they're watching the water, watching the water rise. In any case, we go and move our vehicles to higher ground, and as we're coming back, the water has risen already. It has risen from here to here. And my husband says to me, we're walking into water. He calls me Bunny. Bunny, we're walking into water, he says. And I said, no, we're not. No, we're not. He said, we're walking into water. And so we get into the house, and in fact, the water's coming. And I think I can control it. And so I run, and I say to him, I'm shouting at him, go get every towel, right? Because I'm thinking I can stop the water. And so we get every towel, every blanket, everything that you can think of to stop the water. And as you might imagine, right, by a show of hands, how many of you were flooded? Okay. So as you might imagine, no sooner do I put the whatever it is, right, blanket, I had everything you can imagine. No sooner do I put it, in front of where the water's coming in, right? It's floating, right? It's like, bring me more, and then I exhaust everything that I have. And at that point, truly I use the term exhaust, right? Because I am now exhausted. And so I just sit down. On my sofa. And at that moment, I can hear the water rushing. And I just sit there and listen to the water rush in. And I think to myself, that really, what can I do at this moment? I've used everything that I can think of. I've used, nothing's worked. And so I say to myself, I think you should go to bed. As crazy as that sounded, I thought, I'm gonna need my strength. And so I did. I got up and I went to bed. And I want you to know I slept like a baby. I slept soundly. Who knew? I woke up at about 5 a.m. and went downstairs. And the water had started to recede. The water was going away. I sat on my stairs. So fortunate for me, I have a 2-story house. So the water never made it to the stair, made it up the stairs. And so I sat on the stairs. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I sit on the stairs as the sun comes up, and I'm frozen. I'm literally frozen. And you don't know me, right? And you certainly you don't know me well. You don't know me really at all. But trust me when I tell you, right, that I'm not one that freezes very easily. Like, I generally think I have a plan. I had no plan. I had no idea what to do next. I had never been flooded before. I'd never really experienced a disaster before. I didn't know. I'm rushing in my head trying to remember where my insurance policies are. By the way, we had packed, right? Everything was up, flipped over, and filled with water. It's like, so where do you even start? We had no power. I had, 4,000, I don't even know what, towels, blankets all over the house. And sat there thinking, what do I do next? And ultimately I find the insurance company people, right? I call them and they're like, yeah, we can be there. We'll have somebody there in a week. A week, I said to them. What? A week. I'm thinking, I don't know for you, but even now as I say it out loud, a week, you might as well have said to me a year. A week felt like I will not survive a week without somebody coming to my home. I will tell you that neighbors, right, I wasn't alone. Ultimately, that certainly helps when you're not alone, because others in my neighborhood, of course, had lost. Some who had single-story homes had lost, everything. So then, by the way, the insurance company says to me, right, take lots of pictures and don't get rid of anything. I'm like, okay, right? And so it smells. I don't know if you know how it, if you can imagine just for a second as you sit here, the smell of this, of what's happening in my house. And then the next person I talk to, I don't know, a couple hours later, tries to tell me, right, that what you know what you need to do? You need to rip it all out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I can't do anything. I'm not allowed to touch anything. They told me to take pictures and I can't touch anything. So this idea of what's happening to my mental health at this time. Who do I listen to? Who don't I listen to? Who's right? Who's wrong? How much do I have to endure? My husband, by the way, refused to leave the house. I've already told you that. Right, and so now he's worried about looters, right, and people coming into the home and doing goodness knows what if we've left the house. Not that there's anywhere for us to go necessarily. I don't even know where. A hotel, I guess, or where we would have gone. In any case, so I'm told I have to rip it all out. You have to rip it all out. You have to rip it all out up to 4 feet. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? Right? I don't know how to rip anything out. I've never ripped anything out of a house in my life, right? I don't know what that means, right? But so then I start calling people to come rip it out, right? Now I can't do that before the insurance people get there, but I want to get on people's list for them to come rip it out. And which I don't even know I truly didn't even know what that meant. And I'll tell you guys what it means. It literally means you're ripping it out. It literally means that they're going and taking 4 feet of your house. They're ripping up floors, they're taking out doors, they're ripping it all out, right? And so So I call a bunch of places. Nobody can get me on the list. Nobody can get me on the list. I finally find somebody who can get me on the list, and they tell me it's going to be, the only way to get me on the list is $9,000. A cash deposit of $9,000. And if I use a credit card, it's going to be 6% more. So I say to the guy, because now I'm irritated. My mental health is starting to suffer at this point. I say, so you have $100,000 in your bank account? And he said, no, ma'am. And I said, well, everybody's acting like I have $100,000, unrestricted $100,000 in my bank account. Like, where am I supposed to get this money? I don't know, ma'am. He says, I don't know. But the only way you can get on my list, which is 2 weeks from now, is if you give us a $9,000 deposit, period, the end, right? So this thing then starts to repeat itself over the deposits that we now have to, cash deposits, and if you're using a credit card, it's going to cost you more, and this kind of thing, which is, now I'm gainfully employed, I have a good job, I have all the things, and I've said this a thousand times if I've said it once. The experience, though, is that people live to their means. People live to their means, and people don't often just have $100,000 unrestricted sitting in a bank account somewhere, right? They just don't generally have that. And so this idea that, from my perspective, I wanted to say to people, and I'll talk about this a little bit more as we go, is because I needed an electrician, I needed a plumber, I needed a drywall expert, who knew? I needed a painter, I needed someone who could rip out my floors and put my floors back in. I needed 8 different professionals. All of them needed 50% cash deposit down, right? It literally would have been and was $100,000 to get, right? And by the way, this is Hurricane Helene. We're not even talking about Milton yet, right? I don't even know Milton exists. I don't know that any of us knew that Milton existed at this juncture. At this juncture. And so this idea of you have to qualify for assistance. I really have to say to you, and I'm probably preaching to the choir at this point, but really at this other conference that we were talking about a minute ago, I think there were people in that room who are decision makers and policy makers that I wanted to be speaking directly to say, you have to think through a different lens when you're talking about disaster recovery. And things like how much money you make shouldn't be the qualifying criteria. Like the only words that I should have to use in order to qualify for assistance is I've lost everything. I've lost everything. Now, maybe a year in, so we're now a year in, maybe a year in, that story's different, right? I certainly had access to resources that other people may not have had access to. I didn't know it at the time, by the way, because there isn't a roadmap for some of this. We didn't have a cheat sheet. By the way, what I told them is we need to create cheat sheets for people. So I never considered it. I never thought about it. But I've been contributing to a 401k for the better part, a little bit here, a little bit there throughout my career. And it turns out that you can rob your 401k to pay for things like disasters without penalty. So I didn't get a penalty, but I certainly robbed my future. I took money out of my retirement in order to do it because I didn't have it any other way. $100,000, I didn't have it. Right? So is that, right, wrong, good, bad? Is that on me? I don't know. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, right? But the question is if you don't have $100,000 sitting in your savings account right now, what I would encourage you to do is be thinking about, well, how is it that you would pay for the 50% down to get on somebody's list, right? I do think that I still have, interestingly enough, they renewed me. I do have good insurance, I think, flood insurance. I think it's good. I don't know really how to compare it to somebody else's flood insurance. I don't know if mine pays as well or pays less. I just don't know the answer to those things. I will tell you that my adjuster was lovely. He was kind when he finally got there, and it did take him a full, I think, 7 to 10 days before he was there. And he was lovely. I did get FEMA there early, pretty early. FEMA came in, and it was a disaster. The individual that they sent in there her own mental health had suffered. And quite frankly, I think she had seen too much. She was in no shape. I literally, because I am a clinician by training, by the way, I literally had to become her therapist in my house. I mean, we just, like, at one point I felt myself like as a homeowner kind of arguing with her about things. And then all of a sudden I realized what was happening. And I thought, we got to turn the tables here, right? We got to put her back together and help her get on her way. Because this is not going to be good for her, for us, right? It's not going to help. So we had lost everything on our first floor with Helene. We were, no sooner trying to, muck it. They call it mucking it out, right? I don't know if you guys have heard these terms before. I had never heard mucking it out before. I had no idea what that meant. And so we're in the process of that, right? I've got industrial sized fans in my living room, right? It sounds like a jet engine going 24 hours a day, right? Because they've pulled it all out. We've got to dry it because of mold and the mold prevention kind of things, which they scare you to death about. Again, thinking through the mental health lens about how we talk to people about mold and mold prevention and other things. These scare tactics, like, we need to bring it down. We need to bring it down a couple of notches, as opposed to scaring people that they're going to die in the next 24 hours because of mold, right? We need to bring it down a couple of notches, in my opinion. And now all of a sudden, here comes Milton, right? And so here comes Milton, and I'm thinking, what do I do? So on the news, right, we got mayors who are telling me to write my first and last name on my arm, because when they find my dead body, that's the only way we're going to be able to identify who you are. That's on repeat on news, Bay News 9, repeat. Write your first and last name here. I've got law enforcement going through my neighborhood on a loudspeaker. Leave now, you will die. You will die. You will not survive this. What is happening right now? I'm saying to myself, what is happening? What is happening, right? Now, my husband, as you know, who's hard-headed, right, is like, now we've got his attention, right? Because he's like, he's not going to write his first and last name. And so I don't know what to do with because it's going to be a 15-foot storm surge. We will not survive, is what I'm being told. By every mechanism possible, I'm being told I will die. And so I hire the last movers that I think existed in Pinellas County to come and pack all the you-know-what up, right? Pack whatever's upstairs, whatever it is, pack it up and take it, right? Because I'm going to lose now everything that I didn't lose in the first one. I'm going to lose in the second one, right? And I'm thinking, oh God, right? Some of the things that I lost in the first one, though, it's important to talk about. We can't talk about all of them, but I've been married for 41 years. I am a collector of ornaments for my Christmas tree. I had the ornament that I got the day I got, my first Christmas married, my first baby. I had every Christmas ornament, right? I lost them all, right? I had a Barbie doll collection of my daughters, that we thought was going to be worth something someday, kind of thing, right? We lost every Barbie. And when we were cleaning it up before Milton, we were cleaning it up, right? And I'm doing all the things that you might imagine I'm doing. And people around me are also doing. Mom, I think we can save this. Mom, I think we can save this. The adjuster says to me, throw it all out. If it touched the water, you got to throw it out. And then item by item, I'm picking up, I'm like, I think I can clean this. I think I could keep this. right? My twin sister, I have a twin sister. My twin sister comes over the morning of, as the sun's coming up, right? I've got, 750 towels all over my house. It's disgusting. It smells like, sewage. And my twin comes in and she's like, she doesn't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But what she says is, we're taking it all to the laundromat. I'm like, the hell we are, right? It's all going in the trash can. And she's like, nope, we're not. So she doesn't know what else to do but to gather it and to take it to the laundromat, which, by the way, she did. She gathered it and she took it to the laundromat because that's all she knew to do, And so when Milton is coming, and I've got to write my first and last name on my arm because I'm going to die, and the police are coming through, and I'm thinking, so we pack it all up, right? The only storage shed available, right, is in Crystal River. So they pack my entire house, whatever's left in my entire house, which is the second floor, and they take it to Crystal River. And as you know, Milton comes and goes, and we didn't get the storm surge, thank goodness. And what happened for us is that it took my roof. So what I didn't lose in Helene, I lost in Milton because it took my roof. By the way, my roof is being done as we speak. They started on last week. So a year in, and I'm almost. So then I'm standing in a grocery store when I hear that I need a permit. So remember, I know nothing about mucking anything out. I know nothing about, we got to rip it all out. I know nothing about any of these words. I've never built anything, have no intention of building anything, have never wanted to build anything, right? But I overhear these two individuals talking about a permit, that I need a permit for painting, for ripping the drywall out, for putting drywall in, for putting floors in, to hang a door. I'm like, can you just repeat what you just said? Like, I need a what? I need a permit for these things. And I'm like, well, where do I get one of those? How do I get one of those? Who says I need one of those, right? Well, you're going to have to go to the city that you live in. I'm like, okay, right? So I show up. It's Halloween. It's October 31st. So you guys know the dates, right? It's September 27th when Helene hits. It's October 8th or something when Milton hits. I learned that I need a permit on October 30. So on October 31st, I show up at the city of Largo's permitting something or another that they've stood up at a library like this. And I walk in, and the first woman that I see is a young woman. I don't know how old she is, but she's a young woman, 20 something. She's dressed like Pippi Longstocking. Her hair's going straight up. She's got this, right? And so I walk up to her and I say, it's my understanding that I need a permit, right? And I'm saying it in this very cautionary way because I don't even know what really that is. I don't know what a permit is. I don't know how many of them I need. I don't know how long it takes. I don't know what it costs. I just don't know, right, about this permit. So I say to her, it's my understanding I need a permit. She goes, yeah. And I said, well, I was unaware that I needed a permit. This is what she did to me. She's as close to me as this thing is. And she says, with her head, it's not my job to tell you you need a permit. I said, listen, little sister. I said, were you flooded? She said, no, ma'am. And I said, then you shouldn't be allowed to talk to me. And I'm thinking, this is how things go south, right here. This little interaction that we're having, her rolling her head at me and telling me, it's not my job to tell you you needed a permit. Well, whose job was it to tell me I needed a permit? I still don't have the answer to that, by the way. Back to the cheat sheet. So if you're ever flooded, just so you know, you need a permit. You need a permit for everything. right? You need a permit to rip it out. You need a permit to put it back in. You need a permit, right? And guess what? There's fees and fines and all kinds of things if you don't follow the rules relative to permits. And ignorance of the rule is no excuse. You don't get to say I didn't know, which was true for me, by the way. I did not know. But if you say I don't know, it's not okay. So she's as truly as whatever word you want to use, right? Disrespectful, to say the least, as I've just mimicked for you my entire interaction with this young lady. And they're goofing around and goosing each other right in the background, all dressed in their costumes, while there is a line of us who have presumably lost some version, if not the entire version, right, of our lives as we stand there trying to figure out this permit thing, right? And then I'm told, right, well, you can hire a general contractor to do your permit, or you can pull your permit, right? So I'm like, well, which one should I do? Well, there's nobody who can help you decide which one you should do. Well, I didn't have a general contractor. I didn't even know where to find one of those. I didn't know how to find one of those. So I'm like, oh, I'll just apply for it myself. Then I have to sign all this stuff. I can't sell my house for a year. If I do this, that, the other thing, right? You're going to be fined and penalized and all kinds of threatening language. And I'm just like, what is happening, right? And again, I'm a pretty resourceful person, right? So imagine I'm 85 years old. Imagine I don't have a vehicle to get to wherever it is. Imagine I'm not, right, a resource. Imagine I have my neighbor. I was telling the story earlier. My neighbor has a disabled, fully disabled 17-year-old son, right? They didn't leave. They had to, the power goes out, which means his electric chair doesn't work, right? It's filled with salt water. They've got to lift him and put him in a canoe, right? And get him out of our neighborhood. And so now we stand in front of that same mom and say, it's not my job to tell you you need a permit. What is happening, right? Why would we say, again, I could go on. Anyway, so we've packed it all up, right? I am now trying to get a permit. By the way, you don't get a permit the day you apply for a permit, in case you didn't know that. I didn't know that. I thought I'd go down there and they hand me a permit, right? I don't know what this is, but surely you're going to give me one of those things, right? No, that is not how it works. So the next day, and I can't do anything without the permit. So I show up at City Hall, City of Largo, for 12 days. Every morning at 8 a.m., I'm there asking about my permit. And the first day tells me, well, we didn't check a certain box. The next day they tell me, well, it says here you didn't need it for a couple of weeks. There's one reason after another about this permit, 12 days. On the 12th day, I say, I'm not going to use the word aggressive, but pretty firm. I say, you're starting to impact my mental health. Only I say it louder than that. You are starting to impact my mental health. And just then, somebody that I couldn't have seen before pops up and says, let me handle this. It was as if he had been trained like active shooter training. Yeah. Because the minute I said, you're starting to impact my mental health, boop, he popped up and was like, I got this. It's like, if I would have known those little magic words, right? So he comes out, and he was, in fact, amazing. He was kind. He was helpful. He was kind. And it was almost as if all you had to do at that point was be kind. And what do you think I did the minute he showed kindness? What do you think happened to me? I cried. I burst into tears. Because it was all the stuff coming out of me, right? And he showed me 1 ounce of kindness, and I burst into tears. And he stood there with me, and was very helpful about what I needed to do. And by the way, this process is very difficult of what I had to disclose for the permit. You know, like I had to identify the doors. I had to tell them the very doors I was going to use. I had to tell them how would I know those things? He helped me. He said, sit here at our computer. There were 2 computers. Sit here at my computer. Go to the Lowe's.com. Look for the doors that you want. Use those codes. Use those codes. What I can tell you, he says, is if they don't have those doors when you get there, it's time to order those doors, you're going to be in trouble because this number has to match this number. So, you know, when I think about disaster recovery, right, and so then I start reading recently, maybe you guys have seen the same things that I've seen, they start putting out these documents for disaster recovery. And for Pinellas counties, it said hurricane help that puts people first. That was the name of it. Hurricane help that puts people first. And I thought, well, that's lovely. That's exactly what we need to do. We need to in fact put people first. So I read this 123-page document, and by the way, if you haven't read these 123-page documents, I would encourage you to read them. It's about disaster recovery. We were allocated in Pinellas County, we were allocated $813 million in disaster recovery block grants. City of St. Pete got us a whole separate allocation. We apparently reported in Pinellas County alone, we reported $5.2 billion in losses in our county. So the $813 million, which sounds like a lot of money, as you can imagine, isn't really gonna touch it. I'm assuming, right, the difference is supposed to be made up in insurance and a variety of other things. This resiliency summit that we went to, all the people in the room, most of the people in the room were people who were hardening experts. Do you know what that word means, hardening? So we're hardening things to be able to withstand storm surge, wind, right? Codes are changing, a variety of things are changing for new builds, for various things, right? We're hardening things to be able to withstand the storms, right? And what I said to them is what I would say to you, but I'm preaching to the choir here, is we have to harden things without hardening our hearts. Because what I can tell you is that my experience was I was not dealing with people whose hearts were soft, tender, helpful, kind. They were moving through the process perhaps in a way that they no doubt had been trained or not in terms of dealing with people. The numbers, in my opinion, if you read these documents, by the way, the City of St. Pete's created their own, Pinellas County has one. Does Gulfport have a separate one? Or is it for the put people first, the hurricane recovery? Are you included in Pinellas County?
We're included in Pinellas.
Yeah. So I would encourage you, have the time, to read 133 pages of, it is an interesting document, in my opinion, in terms of the game plan. So they have to put a game plan together about how we will invest this $813 million to alleviate, prevent, divert, whatever, moving forward. What I will tell you is that the stories, as I told you in the beginning, right, I'm from a community mental health center, right? So in addition to my own experience, I start hearing all the stories from people who are coming to the community mental health center for help. Stories that you might imagine, things like we didn't evacuate, and then we tried to get in the car, and now my car's floating. Some stranger pulled my kids through the window and saved us. I don't even know who he was. I didn't even get to thank him. My son won't sleep anywhere but the bathroom now, right? They're telling me these things. And guess what? At my community mental health center, like every community mental health center, I couldn't serve those people without having a diagnosis. So think about how systems are put together. My thing is to insurance companies, to people who are paying for services, in my case, mental health services, emotional support services. Again, I lead with, I've lost everything, should be the only criteria to receive emotional support, mental health support, food, right? Assistance with permits, right? Whatever it is, the only thing I should have to say is I was impacted by the flood, and whoever's on the other end of that help should be saying, welcome, come on in. What can I do for you? How can I help? How can I be of service, right? As opposed to actually how it works. And so I'm trying to figure out, in my role at Directions for Living, I'm trying to figure out how we can set up emotional support groups. By the way, in order to get a mental health service, right, you have to go through a series of evaluations, right? You have to go through assessments. It has to be medically necessary to bill your insurance, right? All of the things that we know, just like if you go to the doctor, right, to be treated for the flu, right? They want to know what they're treating you for. We have to do the same thing. After a disaster, it should not be that hard. We should literally be able to say, right, all of you are in this room for one reason or another. It shouldn't matter to me why you're here, right? I should say to you, welcome. How can I be of service to you? Because you're here for a reason. So when I read these disaster recovery plans, I really do think that we, the collective we, have to inform, right, how these services are provided. We also provide what is called CISM, a critical incident stress management team of professionals who respond to people in crisis. And so the city of St. Pete called me to say, we have truck drivers. Think about what was happening. So if I just take myself out of being flooded and just think about what was happening in our community, if you were watching the news, you know that everybody had all their debris. So remember all the mucking out business, right? They got to rip it all out. It's all got to be ripped out. All of that stuff that was ripped out of my house was down beside my road. House after house after house. If you drove down Gulf Boulevard, if you were in Treasure Island, if you were in Gulfport, wherever you were, you no doubt saw it. How many of you saw their lives by the side of the road? That's hard to see. That's hard to see. Imagine the truck drivers in between Helene and Milton. They've got to get it all picked up. And they're trying to get it all picked up, and the governor says that we got to keep the debris stations open. And there's a miscommunication, and they lock them all. Do you remember? There's nowhere for the truck drivers to go. There's not enough truck drivers. There's not enough trucks. So we go down to the city of St. Pete, and we're talking to the truck drivers. I can't even describe for you the impact to their mental health. They're saying to me, I'm being yelled at. People are calling me names. They want me to do something that I don't have the power to do. Then I'm talking to the water people who are like, we're walking through water chest high. We had to make the decision to turn the power off to the baby hospital. Talking about all children's. They had to turn the power off to the hospitals. And then one says, I don't even want to tell you what he told me, actually. It's very traumatic. He found deceased pets. Only he describes it in a way that I won't describe for you. And so then I'm standing at my office, right, holding a staff meeting, and this woman walks out, one of my team members walks up to me. She's literally in her pajamas. And she says, I'm so sorry that I'm in my pajamas, but this is all I have left. I lost it all. I lost everything. She said, I think some of my coworkers are going to help me buy some shoes. Right? So I think if you've been in this situation, if you've been around in Gulfport, right, you know this impact. And so I'm cleaning up my yard. I'm trying to do what I can, right? I've got one of my little grandchildren. His name is Archer. I call him Baby Archer. He's 4 at the time. He's 5 now. And we're outside cleaning up the debris, what we can do. and because you can't be inside the house, it smells to high heaven. Anyway, we're outside. And he says to me, he sits down on the patio there, and he says, Yaya, they call me Yaya. I am not Greek. He says, Yaya, I'm so sad. And I said, baby, why are you so sad? He said, because all the children that have to start all over. I said, what children that have to start all over? He said, all their toys are down beside the road. And he was right. He had not been flooded. He had not lost anything, right? His grandparents had, but he doesn't live with us. And we certainly were sensitive to our words and our language and all the things that we were saying in front of him. But he sits in a car seat and he drives down the road like all of us. And he sees on the side of the road all the things, all the toys in my neighborhood alone. Doll houses and little toy vanities and toy trucks and toy this and toy that, all beside the road. So even our children who weren't impacted, and all of you, right? One of my team members says, you know, I come to work every day and I feel so good about it. And then I get in the car to go home and I'm re-traumatized every single day because I'm seeing it all beside the road. And I feel so powerless and so helpless, right, with their stuff beside the road. Then there was a resiliency fund that came out. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but a resiliency fund was created. You could apply for money using the resiliency fund. And so at Directions for Living, we applied for resiliency funding. And I asked for whatever the amount was. I think it was $50,000. I wanted $25,000 to help my team members, right? Remember the woman standing in front of me who has nothing but her pajamas left, and $25,000 for the clients that we serve. That's what I asked for. We got an approval letter that said, we're going to fund you $25,000 for the clients that you serve, and not a single penny, this is a direct quote, not a single penny can be spent on your staff. That's a direct quote. I refused the money, all of it. And I've told the story 1,000 times. It was the Pinellas Community Foundation. And I will tell the story 1,000 more times. Because we have dehumanized, demoralized, we have said some people count and some people don't, and we don't understand how the system, that is the human race, works. And without a community mental health provider who literally is sending professionals down to help the sanitation workers because they're turning off water to baby hospitals, aren't eligible for help. Because I don't know why, to be honest with you. There was no reason provided other than not a single penny, direct quote, can be spent on your staff. So my choice was to all the people. We had about 30% of our staff who were impacted, 30% of my staff who lost everything, 30% of my staff who, right, couldn't come to work. I can't operate a business at 30% less than, right, what I need to operate the business. So I say all of this to say that, you know, resiliency and getting ready for storms and after storms and before storms and during storms, right, it really does start with people. And I have a whole list of things that I really think that we should collectively, that we should be doing to be ready for storms, and so that we are ready even after. And I know that places like Gulfport and people who live on the water, right, this idea that they didn't need help because they had the financial resources, because somehow the square footage of their house meant that they didn't need the same kind of help. We have to, I think, level set, especially in the weeks and the months immediately after the storm. Yes, do I believe that people who are uninsured, underinsured, need more assistance, more access to things than people who are insured? Yes, no doubt that is true, right? But it took me 75 days to get anything from my insurance company. 75 days. before I got anything from my insurance company. And ultimately, my insurance company covered everything except for about $75,000, right? So $75,000, right? We rob out of our future, right? It just means I'll work until I'm, I don't know, 85 instead of until I'm, 70 or something, right? In any case, I do think that we need to level set around emotional support groups and mental health care and, access to things that shouldn't require all this red tape, for lack of a better word, right? It's red tape. In the end, it's red tape. I really do think that we should be able to say to somebody I was impacted. I lost everything, right? The other day, I'm walking up my driveway. It's been a year. I'm walking up my driveway, and I find a little Barbie shoe. And I almost lost it. It was just yet another reminder, right, that all the Barbies went in the trash can, and here's this little Barbie shoe. And I know that on, September 27th, I don't know about you, but I'm reliving on the 27th, right? And then the 27th passes, and then we get to, right, October, and I'm like, oh, but, I don't dare say it. I don't dare say it, right, that we haven't had, I don't dare say it even here, now, because we're not even at the end, right? I do think that we have to plan. I think we have to plan for the mental health of our community. And now is the time to plan for the mental health of our community, which is in advance of the next storm. Will there be another storm? Yes, there will be. Will it be this year? We don't know. Will it be next year? We don't know. But we know there will be another storm. And when there is, I think we need to be prepared. I read the 133-page document for Pinellas County, and I read the city of St. Pete's. What I will tell you is that in Pinellas counties, there is not a mention of mental health. Not a mention of mental health. In the city of St. Petersburg, they spend quite a bit of time on mental health. And I would argue and advocate that it is because of conversations like these that one plan has it and the other doesn't. It's that we spend the time educating people. Because I don't think that Miss Pippi Longstocking, right, I don't know that that really is who she is, right? What I can tell you is that she's probably a lovely human being, but she had not been trained for trauma-informed care. She had not been trained in mental health first aid. She had not been trained in how we talk to people who've experienced a crisis. And so while some of that comes naturally to many of us, no doubt, in this room, it doesn't come naturally to everybody. And especially people who are doing permits for builds, new builds. That's what she does all day, is people who are building things. She wasn't differentiating between the permit that I needed and why I needed it and the permit that John Doe needed because he was building something new. She didn't differentiate between how she spoke to the two of us, right? Because I think she hadn't been trained to do that. That's my grace that I'm giving her, is that it really does come with training about, how to talk to people and what kindness can do, even if you can't do anything else. Simple kindness, right? The guy at Largo, right? He wouldn't have had to do anything for me other than his kindness, and I just burst into tears, right? So I will leave you with that. I do think true resiliency begins with people, all of us. And if you are in the life of somebody who's been flooded and you are still their support, simply saying, I see you, you matter, simply saying things like, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. I'm sorry that you've had to go through this, can be very, very helpful. It just simply can be very helpful to say that I see you. And I know what that Barbie shoe, right, means to you. The number of people who gave me Christmas ornaments this year, right, told me that they heard me, that they saw me, that they, this kind of thing, There's stories I could tell you for days about Thanksgiving, right? Like my husband, I'll just tell you one last story. My husband says, because we have nothing in our house, right? Literally, it's concrete floors. There's no door anywhere, right? So the bathroom doesn't work, but even if it did, you couldn't use it because there was no walls, no doors, no nothing, right? And I must have said something to somebody because I host Thanksgiving at my house. I have every year, and for years, for decades, right? Since I became my mom retired from being the matriarch, right? And I get put in place. And so it's at my house, right? 15, 20 people come to my house every Thanksgiving. And so I must have said kind of under my breath out loud or whatever about we weren't doing Thanksgiving. I mean, I didn't have a plate. I didn't have a chair. I didn't have a table, right? I didn't have anything, right? And my husband says to me, Bunny, please don't give up on Thanksgiving. And I'm thinking, what in the holy hell? And what? I'm like, what? He's like, Bunny. He calls me Bunny. You guys can't call me Bunny. Bunny, please don't give up on Thanksgiving. And so I'm like, all right. I won't give up on Thanksgiving. So I start thinking, all right, well, how would I do this exactly? And I'm like, you know what? I'll go to Sam's or Costco and buy tables. I'm gonna buy chairs. We're gonna put them in the flipping driveway. We're gonna set up the tables, right? We're gonna use paper plates. A friend of mine said, actually it was my floor guy. He says, you can call, and he told me some restaurant, Flamestone, Firestone, something. He goes, they'll put the whole damn thing together for you. You just go pick it up. I was like, really? He's like, yep. And so that's what I did. And I want you to know that the people came, and my brother-in-law says to me, April, you had a ready-made excuse not to do this, and you did it. Because we go around the table to say what we're grateful for before dinner. And he said, and so what I'm grateful for is I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that you didn't give up on Thanksgiving. And I thought, yeah, we don't give up. We don't give up on Thanksgiving. And so we had Thanksgiving in the middle of the driveway, on folding chairs, on paper plates. And I want you to know it's probably the best Thanksgiving we've ever had. It was amazing. And so I say all that to say that we are resilient people. And resilience starts with people. And I'm thankful to April for giving me the opportunity to come here because I think it's this conversation that gets us in a disaster recovery plan that says that, in the end, we can harden everything, but we cannot harden our hearts because it is the people that we have to take care of in the end. So thank you very much for hearing me tonight.
Thank you so much. So, yes, I hope you appreciate as much as I did from hearing her before, how wonderful that was. I hadn't cried before I heard her, and that was months after the storm, and I cried. So one thing I want you to know is some of the steps we've taken is the mayor put together a lot of people who had been affected to try and put together what did we do, because none of us knew what to do, So from contacting your insurance, taking pictures, getting a public adjuster if you needed, how to get the permits, what to do, because we hadn't known that. And so from people who had done it, we put together a whole paper on it, and it's on the website, so that next time we'll have a starting point. So that was a very good thing. Thanks, Karen. So there's a few people here. Is Lynn? Yes? So Lynn, if you want to come up and...
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lynn Taylor. I've been a Gulfport resident for going on 14 years. My husband and I lived in seaside villas, and when the storms hit, we evacuated. We lost a car, and we were evicted from our apartment. We never slept there again. And amid 2 insurance claims, 2 FEMA claims, my husband had some heart issues during the time. We were living in 3 different locations and hotel hopping for a while. And I know this all sounds very familiar to people, but it struck me just how strong our community was. I mean, I always felt it ever since I first came here, just how people are always willing to help each other, that when somebody has a problem, a neighbor will step in and help solve that problem. And so I decided to put together a book about people's experiences during the hurricanes. And since Gulfport is such an artsy town, I asked the people who wanted to contribute to contribute in the way they best express themselves, whether it was a painting, a poem, a photograph, a personal story. And so I received 42 contributions, which are now in a book titled Gulfport Rising. And the books are on their way now as we speak. It's published by the Gabber newspapers, Thursday Morning Media. And the books will be available at our book launch for the first time, which is October 18th from 5:30 to 8:30 at DRV Gallery in Gulfport. We'll have an artist showcase, and we will also have readings from the people who contributed to the book, and of course the book will be for sale. I hope you all come. Thank you.
And Amy, do you want to come up and talk about your event? I want to say too, I was so afraid to go to my house because I've been evacuated just up by Stetson. And I just thought going there by myself to open the door and see what was there. And a woman who was homeless, and I met from seeing around town, she was there waiting for me, already picking stuff up. And that just meant everything. So, anyway.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Costa. I am one of the co-founders of the Midtown Business Collective and also one of the co-owners of Wonderworks up on Gulfport Boulevard. Fortunately, I did not suffer any major damage throughout the hurricanes, but at the time I was working with the chamber. So the next morning, me, along with a bunch of our community members, many who are here, rallied and just kind of showed up to find out what can we do to help. And that in itself was as much as an honor it was to be able to help everyone. There was a lot of trauma in that of going into homes and my background's in counseling. So I was, doing that piece of just trying to support people where they were and helping them haul furniture out of their homes and all the things. So when this time was coming back around, we were trying to think of, along with some of these things that were coming up, what we could do for our community. Just anniversaries in general can be very traumatizing. If you have a trauma that happened and that date comes up and that day you're going to be feeling all the things again. So on the same day as the Gulfport Rising event, we are hosting a Hurricane Community Day of Healing. You don't have to have been affected by the hurricane or in any way. If you want to come, everyone is welcome. We will be having sound bowls, music, Reiki, massage, any kind of therapeutic. We'll have sharing circles. We'll have some counselors on site who can do one-on-ones, just to provide a space where you can come, be heard, be seen, share your story, listen to some music, get a massage, whatever it is we have, it will be provided free of cost to the community. Christine Walker's back here. She is helping us organize and bringing some practitioners together. So we invite everyone to come, put on your calendar. Please spread the word. There's flyers like this and little ones out there, so take them if you have people you can share them with. And we just hope to see you on Saturday, 10 to 2 at Wonderworks. It's 5314 Gulfport Boulevard South, right across from Gulf Orchids. So look forward to seeing you. Thank you, April, for organizing this, and thank you for sharing your story.
So I represent kind of the flip side of you. My name is Jill Hawken, and I'm with an organization called SALT, Serving and Loving Together Disaster Recovery. So we're a nonprofit organization, and we work in long-term recovery about this time. Once the long-term recovery groups have funding available, we work with folks that are uninsured and underinsured. This is about the time that the FEMA disbursements have hit, insurance claims have been paid, and although it might help some people to a certain degree, you're still with a gap, and we help fill that gap as best we can, based on qualifications, et cetera. But we are grant funded. So we have parameters that we've got to work within and meet. And so my name is Jill Hawken, and this is Candy Cornish. This is our construction coordinator. So there's a case manager, Sasha Greta, who could not be here, and a couple other folks as well. But I am one of the founders. And we've got a couple flyers we'll leave behind. And we're happy to talk with anyone, see if we can help you out. We know that this is the time. Unfortunately, between all of us, we've got about 25 years of disaster recovery experience. So I've worked with Irma, Hermine, Matthew, and I was just finishing up Ian down south when a lot of those folks are double whammy. I live in Indian Rocks Beach. I was lucky. I was out of town. My neighbor right behind me was completely flooded out, and they sit at 5 feet, we sit at 9 feet. We lost some fence and some yards, so I was incredibly lucky, but Candy wasn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I live down off of, why can't I think of the name of the road right now, right? It's right over on Madeira Beach, Tom Stewart Causeway. I live right off of Tom Stewart Causeway. I just remember walking out my door and it looked like Whitewater Rapids. And I couldn't explain what had happened. I mean, the emotions come right back up, right? And I remember when Milton was coming and seeing all of this debris on the side of the roads and just thinking, how could we possibly, move all of this? Where is it all gonna go? That was the other question I had, is where does it all go, right? I mean, you guys saw, we had literally just empty parking lots. We're like, that's a great place for trash, right? We're gonna put it there. Unfortunately, our organization, we have to wait on funding for our organizations, right? And sometimes, our funding doesn't come in until 8, 12 months, sometimes 16 months after the storm. So when we get to a home, yes, they've already gone through that immediate impact of the storm, but the moment that we come in, they're going through devastation right now. They really do not have another recourse, right? They may have had some insurance come in. They might have been able to do the muck and gut, right? I think it's great that it rhymes, right? I love things that rhyme.
It's not pretty, but.
But it's one of the worst things that anybody can go through, right? And anyone that has had to go through a muck and gut and is in a flood zone, right, now considered a flood zone, which was not considered a flood zone, right? I've been here for 15 years, grew up in Plant City. I've never experienced anything like this.
I'm from Plant City also. Yeah.
So a big part of that, we flooded. We had to, luckily we only had to do a 2-foot flood cut. We got really lucky. And we didn't have to do the electrical. But a lot of people that did have to do a 4-foot flood cut had to come back through and redo all of their electrical. And depending on the codes and when you got your electrical done, you may have had to do a 6-foot cut and put the electrical up higher, right? There's a lot of things that change in construction. One of the great things about our organization is that we help with hurricane recovery, but it's all encompassing, right? We're helping with the building, but we're also helping with compassion, with care for the individual, for the homeowners. A lot of people, like I said, they are unbelievably impacted when we get to them. So all we're trying to do is put the pieces back together with more than just a Band-Aid.
So, and we do. We've got a case manager that works with us who is still recovering from Hurricane Ian, the flood. So she knows firsthand. She's walked the walk, certainly with a lot of folks. And so, and as Candy said, it's just walking with compassion. We try to help you each step of the way, whether it's a FEMA appeal, whether it is figure out who, we'll get estimates for roofing, for electric, for HVAC. The flooring, we work with volunteer workers as well, if we can, to help put up the drywall, to help put in the flooring, to save some of those costs. So that is just kind of the encompassing part of our organization. But we'd love to, if you know anyone that's impacted, if anyone else is impacted, still walking along that journey, we are happy to talk with them and see if we can help them out. So thank you for giving us some time. I've got some flyers. I'll be happy to leave them out here as well. I think we've got some in the library. But again, the name is SALT, Serving and Loving Together, Disaster Recovery. Just as SALT kind of enhances the flavor of food, we hope to enhance your life a little bit as well.
So I was going to announce, I don't think there's very many people in here who are still flooded, but anyway, the county does have 813 million, and I think 70% of that is meant to be spent on homeowners. And so you can apply for money for people who have a gap between insurance or didn't have insurance or whatever. So, and they're just starting now to disperse that money. And now Zion is going to come up and talk about our next step of this program.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Yeah. Hey, friends. Just wanted to say thank you. That was really inspiring, and the way you spoke was like just a captivating storytelling. And our family went out that next morning and just tried to be there. Archer, my daughter, she wrote a little story that was in Gulfport Living magazine. And, just from that perspective, it is really comforting just to feel that whether it was your own home, like y'all and whoever's been there. I'm a realtor. I've been in those homes also, and just there's no words. How do you? There's only pure empathy, but you can't quite relive that for someone. But what I wanted to invite anyone who is interested. When I was a teenager, I was in a lot of art classes, and my teacher, she brought us to an elder care facility like senior living, and we interviewed an elder and we learned a little bit about their life, and then we made a reflective art piece. So when I was talking with April about this like hurricane healing, I thought, it'd be so amazing if whoever wanted to could use that creative spirit and listen, and it could be right now, if I know we've been here for a while, or it could just be take a number, get a name, make a connection now, and then meet up again with someone. Or go home and think, who was that one I really connected with? We shed tears together. I pulled your mattress out of your house. I have a couple of those memories. Maybe I'm talking to myself right now. I'm like, I'm going to go back and find that lady, and then take some time, and maybe it's a poem, maybe you're a songwriter. Maybe you like to paint or draw, or I was thinking of sculpture, because that's what I did when I was 17 and I made this. I thought of making a Christmas ornament kind of thing about your story. That's kind of what was inspiring. So that's the invitation, just kind of neighbor to neighbor. And in the winter, maybe February, we're thinking of doing kind of a follow-up event where it would be kind of like showcase whoever's made something, and also just kind of this collection of our stories too. So for those of you who were impacted directly and feel comfortable sharing your story, we invite you to do that. And if you want to raise your hand, whoever was flooded right now. Now you can look around and see who those folks were. And if you feel a connection with one of them right now, I invite you to just go ahead and
we can
sit
spread
together.
out anywhere in the library. And what I would invite you to do is whoever's listening to record it on your phone. And if you don't know how to do that, one of our lovely staff people or Jay here will help you figure out how to do that, because I certainly didn't know. And then we have a release form to sign on the desk so that we can put them in the city museum so that we can have them as an archive. And we might use bits and pieces of things to put in this presentation.
Yeah, so the kind of the vision is we'll have something to kind of weave together to make like a video documentary in some ways, video, audio. What do you think?
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, just kind of taking that next step. And thank you, Amy, so much for hosting that event. Lynn, I think, maybe already stepped out, but I'm so grateful that she's featuring Archer's, you want to raise your hand? Archer's little writing. Just the fact that we're that community, that everyone's included, all ages, and just come onto the table. So, yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, again, anybody who wants to can match up with somebody and find a place in the library and just sit and have a conversation for however long that takes. And I know that we may have people, I know somebody already talked to me that they couldn't make it tonight, so they're gonna do it some other time. So certainly if you need other people, you can always do it. And just, if you could send your, send your recording to Zion and to Justin here at the city, and I can give you his information, so that we can compile these things. And, yeah.
Is there gonna be the waiver, will that be put online? So like, say, I have friends that aren't here, like if I were to sit with them, that I could have them fill out the waiver?
I would say yes, that we can put that waiver online so that they can do that. Yeah, we can figure that out. Okay, so meet up and match up and,
Who wants to come?